Hi, I'm Lisa Gonzales, Chief Business Officer here in Mt Diablo Unified. In this week's episode of Ask the CBO, we're going to take a look at recessions. I know that recessions have been all over the news. All the indicators at the national level are that we are heading toward a recession, if not already starting down that road. And so, of course, the question comes up, how do they impact school districts? So we'll take a look at that. To start with, let's take a look at some of the causes of a recession. I've got it on this slide and on the next one, but the first one has to do with inflation. We've seen inflation increasing. We've seen higher interest rates, especially for anyone who is looking to refinance or to purchase a home right now. Interest rates have gone up notably. With all of that comes a lack of consumer confidence. That means that we have a tendency to spend less, or our money doesn't go as far, and investors aren't as thrilled with what they're seeing and are a little more hesitant or resistant to going out and investing or giving money. And then, of course, reduced real wages. These are salaries, and I'll show you a little bit about that in just a minute. Here are some other causes. I thought it was a really great graphic here. Rising oil prices, absolutely, we've seen that. When interest rates go up, and when costs of everything go up, we see credit becoming an issue, meaning that a lot of businesses won't necessarily have the money that they need in order to purchase what they need. We see a fall in housing prices or in the value of assets, maybe not necessarily here in the Bay Area where our housing prices are a little more out of whack compared with the rest of the nation. But again, these are some of the causes. So this is a chart that I want to explain. This has to do with the yield curve. And so a yield curve measures the confidence that investors have in the economy. And they're taking a look at the economy long term. So if you look at the very top where it has the 1.59, or what we do is we say points. And so we multiply 1.59 times 100. A year ago, it was at 159 points. If you go all the way there to the far right where you see the 0.06, we call that 6 points, you can see that investors were really comfortable a year ago. And now you see the narrowing of all of these charts, which means that investors are becoming less and less thrilled with the indicators that they are seeing. It means that bonds, a lot of ways that investors invest, they invest in bonds, and bonds pay a fixed price. And that becomes more attractive if the interest rates in the economy are falling, and it drives up the demand. However, if interest rates rise, and that's what we're seeing right now, investors don't want the lower fixed interest rates that are part of a bond. And that results in a decline in price. And so the yield curve is really measuring the points or the drop in the confidence in bonds. And this is, again, very important. And it's the lead indicator that really lets a country or an economy know if they're facing a recession. So again, this is what typically happens during a recession. You have reduced income, whether it is the businesses or whether it's households, and consumer price or consumer spending declines. Why does that happen? We get a little more conservative with our spending. We have less money coming in. A lot of people that are out there working may end up losing their jobs. That means you spend less. And then when that happens, production falls. Kind of similar to what we saw with COVID, where COVID really forced a lot of businesses to shut down because the demand wasn't there because we couldn't go out and shop necessarily. Now, I want to show the difference between businesses and school districts because the two different types of organizations are really very different. So in a recession, businesses are impacted a number of ways. You can see a column there on the left. They have issues with credit because they aren't necessarily selling as much. Stock prices plunge, which we're certainly seeing, which impacts consumer satisfaction and confidence. Dividends fall, accounts receivable, or the money that we are waiting to collect. Sometimes businesses may be waiting to collect and other businesses are having a difficult time paying that money, which means if you're waiting to get your money and that takes longer, you don't have enough cash necessarily available, a lot of businesses do go through layoffs. They reduce benefits. Again, I talked about the consumer confidence, spending drops, sales decrease. However, a typical school district might see the things that you see there on the right side. If the value of homes drop, it means that the property taxes are decreased, which means we get less money, especially school districts that rely on that local property tax. Same thing with the state funds. Sometimes you see that families are losing their jobs, they file for bankruptcy, they relocate, multiple families may move in with one another, and that can impact academic progress and achievement for students. Sometimes school districts will eliminate positions. I know that when we had the Great Recession back in the 2000s, that's exactly what happened. Districts did a lot of layoffs. And if there are reduced funds, again, you've got the layoffs, you've got service contracts and other prices of things that we do as a business, those all go up, which means that we have less money to go around. And typically, this probably goes without saying, but a lot of the donations are reduced because if families don't have as much spending money, they may not be contributing as much. Now, what I also want to do is I've highlighted the ones that I want to specifically talk about with regard to our school district. We would definitely see some of our revenue being reduced. We wait to see how that might happen, but property taxes do drop. Families may lose their jobs, but you can see that there are some things here that I have not highlighted, like eliminating positions or reducing funding with layoffs. We may not see as much of that because we are really expecting that we're going to have positions that we are going to continue to need to have because we have many vacancies right now. So we do expect the cost of doing business is going to increase. The cost of facilities to run them. I mean, our utilities alone are going through the roof, the same exact way that you're seeing in all of your homes. The cost of materials, supplies, insurance, gasoline, again, the prices that businesses charge us if we contract with them, definitely the donations. Again, hopefully we're going to be able to benefit if other professions and other workplaces end up eliminating positions, that hopefully we can recruit those individuals into our school district to fill the many positions that we do have. But there will also be a demand for higher salaries and more benefits because as money gets tighter in the economy and the price of things go up, of course, employees want school districts to balance that. And so those are some of the impacts that we often hear. And then interest income, because we do have some investments, some of the bonds that we have are sitting in accounts, the amount of the interest on those would be reduced. So I'm hopeful that that answered some questions as to what happens in a recession and how it might affect school districts, as well as potentially Mt. Diablo. Clearly, I don't have a crystal ball, but I've certainly listened to enough webinars and been part of many trainings that have discussed these things. So I hope that this has been helpful. If you've got a question, by all means, send it to cbo@mdusd.org. We'll see you next week.